Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:01. We have the adoption of the agenda coming before us. And we have a couple items that we may want to do a procedural bylaw waiving. One is for waiving the procedural bylaws so that more than one council member can attend virtually. There's going to be two this evening that are attending virtually. One of them is because the ferry is out of service tonight, so they could not make it to the mainland. So our clerk does have some wording for that motion if she wants to share it, and then if we want to pass that, council can do so.
Through you, your worship. So the motion would read that council waive section 10.5 of the procedural bylaw to permit two members of council to participate in the open and closed session of council by electronic means.
So moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Budrick. Call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Just look to the clerk. The other waiving of the motion was potentially for a longer time in open forum, but we were thinking of waiting until after we come out of open. Can we adopt the agenda now and bring that forward at that time?
So through you, your worship, right now you're being asked to adopt the agenda. If you'd like to extend the time allotted for open forum, you can do it at that time later on. But right now you're being asked to approve the agenda, and I understand that there is an amendment to that.
Yes.
As well.
So, okay. So we can just make the decision on the open forum after we come out of close then. I wrote it down here. That's why I got mixed up. So at this time we have a recommendation that the agenda of the November 27th, 2023 be adopted as amended to waive the procedural bylaws so two council members can attend virtually. No? Did I miss something else?
Through your worship. So right now it's the approval of the agenda, and based on the number of people who have registered to speak on the item related to the IESO resolution, what the mayor and I were talking about was moving the agenda items 9.1, 9.2, and 15.1 up to follow item 7, open forum. So that way council can consider hear and consider the item earlier in the agenda and then move on to the rest of the agenda items.
Yes. And you have some wording for that as well?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So the motion would read that the agenda of November 27, 2023 be adopted as amended to move items 9.1, 9.2, and 15.1 to follow item 7, open forum.
Okay. Councillor Prunder. So moved, seconded by Councillor Willis. Are there any questions or comments with that one? Being none, call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Thank you for that assistance. So now, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof for open session tonight? Seeing none, do we have a motion to go? The recommendation is that Council of Loyalist Township now go into closed session to discuss items which relate to approval of closed session minutes, September 11th, 2023 and October 23rd, 2023, and proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land pursuant to section 239 2C, SR 2522, SR 2555, and SR 2514. Do we have a mover? Councillor Parks, so moved, seconded by Councillor Willis. All in favor? Motion is passed. We'll go into closed. Welcome, everyone. We'll start the meeting now. Never done this? Yeah. Welcome, everyone. We'll start this evening's meeting. Welcome to the 21st session of council for November 27th, 2023. In-person meetings have resumed with a hybrid format option where members of council and the public can still join electronically via Zoom. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be available on the township website. All rules apply to the meeting as if everyone was attending in person, and if there's a problem with the technology impacting the proceedings of the meeting may be recessed at the direction of the mayor to confirm that the electronic format is performing effectively before proceeding further with the agenda. In the event of a connection or service disruption to those attending electronically, the mayor may recess the meeting to allow for attempts to reconnect. So this meeting was called to order at 6 o'clock this evening. We were in closed session between that time and now, and we would rise and report that in the recommendation for the rise and report is that in the continuing interest of transparency and open government, the mayor reported in open session the following outcomes from today's closed session meeting. Closed session minutes of September 11th, 2023 and October 23rd, 2023 were adopted as circulated and direction was provided to staff. Do I have a mover to accept this? Councillor Budrick. So moved, seconded by Councillor Parks. All in favor? Motion is carried. At this time, just before we move on, I'd like to also just make a note for the audience, both virtually and in person, and also for the presenters, that when we started the meeting at 6 o'clock, we passed a motion to move items 9.1 and 9.2, which are delegations, and item 15.1, it's the IESO's long-term electrical procurement, to follow item number 7 at the end of the open forum. This was done so that the IESO item can be fully dealt with before advancing through the remainder of the meeting, just for the ease of everyone that's attending this evening. So with that, we would ask, we'll have the national anthem. We would ask everyone to rise they can. We acknowledge that we're being hosted on the ancestral lands of the Haudenosaunee, Mississauga, and Omama Winnini people. We acknowledge and welcome the presence of all the Indigenous peoples including the Métis, Inuit, and other First Nations from across this vast land who also make this place home. The lands we are on today are recognized in the Two-Row Wampum, Dish with One Spoon Treaty, Treaty 27, and the Crawford Purchase. So that brings us to the open forum. So the first 15 minutes of each council meeting is set aside for open forum. Any individual may address council to voice opinion on subjects of municipal concern, excluding matters subject to the public planning meeting, i.e. under the Planning Act. Only speak once and for no more than 3 minutes. Notice is hereby provided that under the authority of the Municipal Act 2001 and in accordance with Ontario's Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection Privacy Act, that all information provided for or at a public meeting, consultation, or other public process are considered part of the public record. And in-person meetings, of course, have resumed with a hybrid format option where individuals can join electronically. So we do have a register here that we have some people signed up, and I'll just make sure I find the right paper. And I would just like to reiterate that, there it is. Just like to reiterate that there are a couple items under the Planning Act coming up later in the agenda for the Emma Street and the William Street project. So there will be time set aside for those two individual items, and you don't have to speak during open forum for those. We'd ask that if there's a group that if you could delegate a spokesperson, then that would be great. Just helps to keep the meeting moving along. And if all of your items have been mentioned previously, we'd appreciate you allowing the council to be able to move the meeting along. And just to also note that council has received a number of emails over the last few days, and we appreciate the residents' level of engagement in the township, and we appreciate sharing your views with us. So with that, the first one under open forum is Gil Field. You present? If you could just come up to the seat, turn the mic on, provide your name and address, and provide us with your information. And we just You'll have some assistance right there. And we just ask that you keep it within the 3 minutes so we can make sure everyone has an opportunity.
A U. Our property is the center of that U. Our home is the center, and that is several of our neighbors. If this proposal proceeds, our home will be surrounded on 3 sides by an industrial facility. The tranquility and privacy that first attracted us to the property would be completely ruined, as would the value of our property. So I oppose the proposal, and I know that many of our neighbors share these concerns. I'd also note that we only heard about this proposal last week. There have been no public consultation to date, and some of the affected households have not even been notified. The company's first public meeting is currently scheduled for Wednesday, 2 days after they come before you asking for a resolution of support. This is not true public consultation. It's a pretense designed to tick a box on the IESO's checklist. I also believe that the proposal raises concerns for the entire community. We're talking about a residential area here. Proceeding with the Caton Mills project would bring significant heavy truck traffic to both Millhaven and Caton roads. During construction, the truck traffic, the construction noise, and the light pollution would impact everyone in the neighborhood, and probably all the way up to Odessa. Even once construction is completed, there'd be ongoing issues with truck traffic, vehicle traffic, noise, light pollution. The neighborhood impact would be substantial and ongoing. Finally, I'd like to point out that the lithium-ion battery technology proposed for Caton Mills is an evolving technology, one that is not without serious risks. Lithium-ion batteries can catch fire, and frequently do. I did a quick internet search the other day and found a listing of 68 separate instances of fires at lithium-ion battery facilities since 2011. And these fires are almost impossible to put out. The fire chief will tell you that if a battery catches fire at one of these storage plants, the fire department would have to let it burn itself out. These batteries are the size of boxcars. If one catches fire, it would burn for 7 to 10 days, spewing poisonous gases into the air and poisonous chemicals into the ground and ultimately the groundwater. And that's assuming that the fire didn't spread from one battery to another in what engineers call a cascade failure. I'm not sure why anybody would take the risk of having this kind of accident in a residential area.
And you're over the 3 minutes. If you could just wrap up. with
Yep.
your Closing comments.
Yep.
Thank you.
As I say, I don't know why anybody would want to take a risk on this kind of accident in a residential area. The question is not whether we should build these facilities. We know the province has a storage problem, but where we should build them. And a residential neighborhood like Caton Road is most emphatically not the right area. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next presenter, Pam Kelber. Same thing, if you could just come up and use the mic, provide your name and address, and then share your information.
Hello, my name's Pam Calver and I live at 754 Caton Road. I was not made aware of this by the company. Fortunately, my neighbors have advised me. I would just like to reiterate what Mr. Gilfields has said. I feel very strongly and I'm very upset that our tranquil country style life will be impacted along with our safety and health concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person that's listed is Eric McBay. Just follow the same routine.
Thank you very much. And I do have a few slides that I believe Anne is going to pop up for me. So my name's Eric McBay. I'm the climate lead at the Providence Center for Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation. I'm here to speak on behalf of more than 50 different community members, constituents here, and also people living directly downwind who are opposed to gas plant expansion for a number of different reasons. First of all, the air that we have is air that we all share everywhere in the world. The United Nations says that by the year 2050, there will be 1.2 billion climate refugees because of greenhouse gas emissions, those released largely in wealthy countries. Next couple of slides, please. Climate, but closer to home, climate change has a direct impact on our health. So in the 20th century, Loyalist region had about 5 days per year that were very hot, over 30 degrees. We now experience 15 days per year that are very hot. And by the end of the century, we'll experience more than 75 days that are very hot. People are 50% more likely to die from all causes, not just heat stroke when the nights are very hot. We've seen also worsening diseases, ticks, and so on. There are also profound impacts of air pollution. Can we go to the next slide, please? According to a 2021 report by the Public Health Agency of Canada, 15,300 people die because of air pollution in Canada every year. That's human-caused air pollution. And I believe you also received a letter from nearly 400 physicians who are opposed to the expansion of gas infrastructure because of the health impacts. One more slide, please. We are also living in a cost of living crisis, a time when energy and all household expenses are higher than ever. Now, the federal government regulations currently would require most gas plants to shut down by the year 2035. In order to incentivize the creation of new or expanded gas plants, The provincial government has offered to pay these companies after they stop generating electricity, which would mean over $1 billion of taxpayer money spent to generate nothing, to do nothing. And I think that would be a very wasteful way of spending taxpayer money. That would also increase the cost for regular people. Final slide, please. So in summary, gas plant expansion would waste over $1 billion taxpayer dollars, harm the health of regular people with air pollution, put greater burdens on our healthcare system, needlessly delay transition to renewable energy, and make cost of living more expensive for Ontarians. So we're asking you either to amend the proposed resolution to explicitly exclude fossil fuel generation from blanket approval, something that the City of Kingston did in October, or to reject the resolution altogether. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. The next presenter is Susan Stone. Hi. Again, if you could just have a seat and just give your name and address and then provide us with your information.
Susan Stone, 321 Mud Lake Road. I've brought a petition that was put up on Friday. I only found out about this around lunch on Friday, so I spent the afternoon drafting up the letter, which I believe you all have copies of. I can read it to the public record if you'd like. One of the other member groups put up a petition on Friday night. To date, we have 80 signatures, and this is over a weekend, including people that, there's a lot of people in our community that are not internet-based. They're not on Facebook sites. I've spoken with people here tonight going, oh, I never use Facebook. So this is just in about a 60-hour period just for the Facebook people, basically. You give me a week and I'll go door to door. I'll go sit outside the arenas and such. I will get you 2,000 votes. People are extremely upset by this. They're extremely offended by it. Now, I think everybody has got pretty much the same sort of thing that I'd like to go a little step further and go right down to the bottom of my letter. I think this situation should be set aside until we have an environmental assessment study done. We need to know exactly what the impact of this is going to be, because once we get down that road, we can't close the door. Once they have one of those fires that ruins, I mean, I think I spent 3 weeks last summer locked in my house because Quebec was on fire. Well, what's going to happen when that fire is right down the road from me? Right? And we can't fix the air after we let it go. These people have made a deadline, but it's an arbitrary deadline and it serves them, not the community, because they don't want us to know about it. They wanted this to be nice and quiet and nobody in the room, and you guys will just sign off on it. Okay. It takes a lot more study than that. And that's what we're asking for. Okay.
Thank you. We do have one other signed up, Simon Chappelle.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Simon Chappelle. I'm at 122 Galbraith Grove Road. I'm a former municipal councillor, City of Kingston, where I was known for saving turtles, trees, and taxes. And I have the other distinguished approach of, I'm actually a member of I'm an independent board member of ISO. So I'm actually, I learned about this as a local resident, and I want to speak on 2 points. The way I read the motion, all it is doing is empowering council to consider ISO's request to have a long-term energy proposal. It's not ruling out projects or endorsing projects. And so my concern is that if there is an amendment as proposed by the speaker suggesting to remove gas, that's a concern I have, because gas is required to stabilize the grid in high energy situations. And that happens in a temperature inversion where the wind doesn't blow and and they have clouds in the sky, so you don't have enough green energy. I'm not here to speak about the proposals of the projects that have been put forward, because I don't believe they've been accepted yet. They're still going through the selection process. In that case, I think some residents spoke very well tonight that they do have legitimate concerns. But the way I read the motion, it's simply empowering council to make a decision in the best interest of the municipality. And I do think that being located here in Eastern Ontario, it's a critical part of our grid, and hopefully Mr. Farmer will be able to speak to that today. It's critical because in a few years, Pickering A is going to be shutting down and we need to stabilize the energy. Otherwise, we're going to be suffering like California has with brownouts and increased costs. A lot of the reason why we have increased costs with regards to electricity is because we're still paying exorbitant amounts of money for subsidized green energy. And we have a very a significant amount of pressure coming onto the grid with people transitioning to electric vehicles and other forms of capacity requirements on the grid. So I'm just asking council to consider accepting the motion as presented to allow for energy planning to happen effectively in the province. Because if we have piecemeal pockets that are not permitting energy expansion or energy use, we're going to have problems in trying to stabilize the grid in the next 10 to 15 years. And that is what ISO is trying to do, is go out to the communities and endorse that and or encourage their participation. And one of the reasons why they're having this debate today is because the provincial government has empowered municipalities to basically make a decision on what sort of energy mix they wish to have in their community. And I think that's a good thing. So I'll leave it at that. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you today.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask, is there anyone else in the audience that was planning on speaking to council this evening? Seeing none, I'll ask in the virtual audience, was there anyone that wished to speak to council this evening? And if so, please use the raised hand feature.
Your worship, we don't have anyone with their raised hand.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that completes the open forum portion of the meeting. We thank everyone for sharing their thoughts this evening. And now I just have to go back to my agenda. We will move to the delegations then, since they were brought forward. The first delegation is Chuck Farmer. If you would come forward to the, or no, he's online, he's virtual. Yes, there we go. Good evening, Chuck. If you're live now, if you wish to proceed with your delegation.
Well, good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My understanding is that the clerk will be sharing a screen and be good enough to advance some slides for me. And I understand I have 5 minutes, so I've started a timer so I don't waste your time. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you about how the ISO is preparing our system for the future and why we at the ISO have recommended that we do need to add some gas as we move through the energy transition. As mentioned, my name is Chuck Farmer, and I am the ISO's Chief Energy Transition Officer, and I am the Vice President of Planning, Conservation, and Resource Procurements. And on slide 2, there is a quick disclaimer. We do currently have an active procurement for new electricity supply. And because that is a competitive process, I can't speak to any of the specific projects so as not to confer a competitive advantage, but I will provide the context behind why we are adding gas generation. On slide 3, who is the ISO? We are the provincial agency that is accountable in legislation to maintain the reliability and affordability of Ontario's electricity system. And we are preparing for the system of the future by ensuring there is enough generation and transmission to meet the future needs of customers. And we are supporting an orderly transition to a net zero electricity system and economy in a way that balances reliability and affordability. On slide 4, we talk about what's happening with demand. And for the last 20 years, electricity demand actually has been very flat. However, we are now seeing the needs increasing, and this is driven by economic development in very energy intensive sectors, significant population and housing growth, and the electrification of transportation and manufacturing and agriculture. And our forecasts show that demand could grow by at least 40% over the next 2 decades, and that would be much higher if electrification efforts intensify. And there is an urgent need to get infrastructure built to ensure that we can meet the growing needs of the province. If we think of recent industrial announcements like Stellantis, Volkswagen, and Umicore, these facilities will be online by about 2026, 2027, and alone those will use the same amount of electricity as the entire city of London. On slide 5, what is the role of natural gas? It plays a very critical role in our system. It provides flexibility and certainty to quickly respond to changes in demand and system conditions, and is key to managing the system during heat waves and other emergencies. And there is not currently a single like-for-like replacement for natural gas generation. We will actually need a portfolio of solutions, some of which are currently unproven and will not be available in the time we need them and at the scale required to meet those near-term needs that I spoke of. So it is very important to recognize that large infrastructure, including transmission, can take 10 or more years to build. And we need a significant amount of new infrastructure, and we need it quickly. On slide 6, emissions reductions can't happen without a reliable, affordable grid. Ontario's electricity system is actually one of the cleanest in North America. It accounts for less than 3% of the province's total emissions and is a key enabler of decarbonization in other sectors of our economy. But it does need to increase in size to support electric vehicles, people switching to heat pumps, and the electrification of industrial processes. And the emissions reductions we're achieving from those efforts are greater than the incremental emissions that we will see from new natural gas generation. And so while we will rely on gas generation into the early 2030s, we are executing a plan to reduce emissions by increasing our conservation programming and building new non-emitting generation, including renewables and nuclear. On slide 7, to get to net zero while simultaneously increasing the size of our electricity system will actually be very complex and challenging, and a diversity of supply will be needed, and we are pursuing all options. We have underway the largest energy storage procurement in Canada. We have expanded our conservation program, such that it's now over $1 billion for 4 years. A new electricity trade agreement with Quebec has been signed, and our nuclear fleet is expanding to include small modular reactors, the potential refurbishment of the Pickering plant in the 2030s, and new large nuclear at Bruce. Hydrogen is also an option we're exploring, and next year we will start procurements for new renewable supply. And we expect to run a series of those procurements as we work towards net zero 2050. All of these things will contribute to our net zero future, but they will take time to deploy, and we need incremental generation now. So on slide 8, in my last 10 seconds, our system is going through transformation. That transformation is far-reaching and impacts communities across the province. And we need the support of communities like yours as we invest in the system to prepare for tomorrow. Thank you so much. I welcome any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Council, any questions for the presenter? Councillor Broderick.
Thanks for the presentation. Thanks for the presentation. Around slide 5, you talked about unproven systems, or I'm not sure if that's the exact word, but I did hear unproven. Can you tell me what they are?
Yes, indeed, Councillor. So in order to provide the services that a gas plant can provide, and so it is dispatchable, it can ramp up and down, it can be used when weather is hot. We are going to have to find things that work together to provide those same services. And so if you think about it, I agree with people who say that, you know, what we need to do is increase wind and solar and nuclear and biomass, hydroelectric, et cetera. But we need storage to make that work. And storage is a relatively new technology that we don't have expertise in running in a way that it's optimal for the system. And the other problem that we have with storage is that it provides a very good service, but it can only do it for about 4 hours. So it can do a lot of the heavy lifting, but we do need the ability to run for longer than 4 hours in certain conditions like extended heat waves and other situations that happen on the grid. So that's an example. Hydrogen, I think, has much promise, but hydrogen is still very much in the development phase. And I'm sure there are new technologies that will emerge over the next number of years.
So if I may, if I can extend that, then are you saying that battery facilities can only work for 4 hours, and they're not 100% reliable? Like, there seems to
No,
be, I'm not getting the same message from what your answer was there to what's in the report.
I wouldn't want to infer that they're not 100% reliable. So when we set up the procurement, we said that we needed capacity that could be dispatched when required, and that could run for at least 4 hours. And most battery configurations now run for about 4 hours. Now, you could run a battery for 8 hours, but it would give you less capacity. You'd just be allowing less energy out all the time. When I said that they're unproven, we know a battery works. We've had batteries for probably a century, but we have to learn how to operate those batteries in the way that best supports the electricity system, and that takes time. It's no different to when we first started adding wind and solar to our grid. We had to learn how to operate those. And so batteries will take time to learn to operate in a way that we can manage the grid. We think it's a very good investment to make. That's why we have recommended the largest storage procurement that we're aware of in the country, because we think this is the key to the future to enable renewable energy.
And just a couple more questions out of your presentation. You mentioned in passing refurbishing Pickering in the 2030s. What's the shutdown date for that?
So Pickering starts to shut down in 2024. With a couple of units will come to the end of their life. And then the balance of the units will shut down at the end of 2026. And the decision is now being considered as to whether to refurbish Pickering. You have a viable site. You have OPG has done some very good work with the refurbishment of Darlington, which gives us more confidence that they can do the refurbishment at Pickering. It would still be until about the mid-2030s before it was actually back in service.
Okay, and just one last one. So you mentioned electricity from the grid in Quebec negotiations have finished or are ongoing. What's the role of Lennox Generating in this whole thing? Because I believe it doesn't operate at anything near capacity. And we, as council, we did a tour there earlier on, and I'm just wondering, you can expand on that a bit.
Well, firstly, that yes, we are just wrapping up a deal with Quebec, and it's a swap. So Quebec tends to be short of energy in the winter when they're peaking. They have a lot of electric heating, so they buy. So we've offered to sell them 600 megawatts in the winter, and they will return that 600 megawatts in the summer. Which is a very good use of our interties, and that takes us to about the maximum of what our interties are capable of handling as they currently are designed. Lennox is such an important facility to the electricity system because it is extremely flexible. And so it really is the true, what we think of as peaker. It comes on when needed to support the system in Eastern Ontario. It provides much more than just capacity. It supports voltage and all the other things we need to make the system actually work. But it's the kind of facility that you wouldn't run as a base load facility given its profile. But it provides, I think of it as really good insurance on the system in Eastern Ontario. It's been a very good asset. We know it's getting on in years, but that is why we have contracted it through 2029.
Last one, I promise. So if Lennox's insurance, what are the possible, I know you can't comment on the individual projects, but what is coming, what do you hope? Is it insurance plus or?
Well, this every system needs a certain amount of insurance, and so what we're looking for is peakers that can support the system, be dispatched as required, and run for as long as is needed to balance the system. So that may be relatively few hours. There may be some conditions where it is more hours, but that is a good way to use a gas peaker plant.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council at this time? Seeing none. Thank you for the presentation this evening, Mr. Farmer and council. We have a recommendation that the council receive the delegation from Chuck Farmer, Chief Transition Officer and Vice President, Planning, Conservation and Resource Adequacy from Independent Electricity System Operator regarding securing Ontario's energy future, the transition transitional role of natural gas generation. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Budrick, seconded by Deputy Mayor Town. All in favor? Motion is passed. Thank you. The next delegation is Philippe Abergel. And if you want to just come forward, turn the mic on, provide your name and the presentation.
I hope that does it. Can you hear me, Your Lordship, Worship? Thank you. Your Worship, councillors, and of course, members of the audience and residents of Loyalist Township who have attended this meeting both in person and online. Thank you very much for affording me the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Philippe Abergel. I'm Director of Development for Energy Storage at Renewable Energy Systems Canada. I'm here to speak with you, and I've submitted this request for a delegation to you today. Council, on behalf of Renewable Energy Systems Canada, as well as our partnership with Aux Energy and Swift Current Energy. Few words about the companies that are proposing an energy storage project in Loyalist Township. RES itself, RES Group, is an international company with a presence in 11 countries worldwide. We have developed and constructed some 23 gigawatts of energy projects, focused largely, if not exclusively, I should say, on renewable energy projects. So there's a member of the audience today who spoke in favor of renewable energy, or at least as opposed to fossil fuel generating capacity. Our business focuses exclusively on the former. We've constructed some 23 gigawatts of energy projects worldwide. That represents about the entire nuclear and natural gas generating capacity of the province of Ontario. Worldwide, we're about 2,000 employees. In effect, at this point, we're probably more about 3,000 employees. We've been in operation and we've been successfully developing projects for about 40 years now. I'll take us to the next slide, if I might. Perhaps before I speak about our partners, though, it's worth mentioning that RES has developed some 20 energy storage projects worldwide, representing over 500 megawatts of capacity. One of those projects is actually Ontario's first energy storage project, located in Strathroy. That was constructed and commissioned in 2013 and has been in successful operations since then without any incidents whatsoever, and it still continues to operate today, operated by a local distribution company by the name of Integris. That project, again, without incident, developed and constructed by RES, now owned and operated by Integris. We have cut our teeth on renewables. We have significant amount of experience developing all forms of energy storage, all forms of energy generating projects, including storage, and I should add, ensuring that projects are well developed, well situated, and located in areas that don't produce the kind of conflict that you are encountering here today. We are partnered with two companies, Aux Energy and Swift Current Energy. Aux is a subsidiary, a wholly owned subsidiary of Hydro One Limited. Swift Current Energy is itself a developer and operator of renewable energy projects as well, across North America, itself being focused until recently in the United States. Together, this is a strategic partnership aimed at ensuring that the three companies, but with the ultimate asset owners being Aux Energy and Swift Current Energy, the project proponents in the IESO LT1 RFP, that we have the ultimate strategic partnership that is best positioned to develop, design, engineer, construct, own, and operate these projects for the long term and the long-term interest of the township and residents, but also as well, the owners and operators of the projects. The next slide, if I might. The project is situated entirely on M3 general industrial property. It is situated on and all of the adjacent properties as well are industrial general zone properties. It is situated just north of Taylor Kill Boulevard, south of the railroad, CN Railway, and to the west of Jim Snow Road. It's the yellow zone represents the area of interest. In fact, that's the largest possible area. The project itself would represent no more than about 15 acres, which is about a third of that area there. One landowner, it would have a maximum project capacity of 400 megawatts. And like, as I said, only one landowner is involved. Again, no adjacent properties are rural or residential. Not a residence is located within approximately 1.5 to 2 kilometers project site. This is intentional development. This is smart development to ensure that some of the flack and blowback that you could encounter is not present when you're dealing with RES and our partners. Next slide, if I might. On top of the smart development that we bring to our project, we are making a proposal to the township that we feel should give you additional confidence in the type of project and the type of partners who aim to develop here. We are, of course, seeking a resolution of support in favor of our project. There's a non-binding resolution of support. We are seeking in favor of our project. I cannot speak for the other projects that are situated within your township. The resolution of support would hopefully be issued in favor of the company, the project name, the proponent itself being Rockery Energy Storage LP. Our commitment to the township and council and residents. We are not simply expecting that you take our word and this presentation as our commitment. We have provided a document and an agreement to the township, submitted this to the clerk in hopes of backing up and eventually consummating a deal that attests to our commitment to these few points. I understand my time is up. I'll wrap up on
Yes, thank you.
We're proposing to make a no strings attached financial contribution to the township, $200,000 upon the first year of commercial operation of the project, followed by an annual $50,000 commitment for the life of the project that would be contributed to a municipally administered fund. No strings attached. That is administered solely by the township. We will negotiate and ensure the development of include a road use cost recovery agreement with the township that we will pay for as well.
You've overextended your time now, so if you could just do your closing comment.
I'll wrap. I think that at this point, the commitments we have made to the township have been clearly submitted to staff. They were distributed to council. We held a public community meeting 2 weeks ago. At this point, we submitted all of the reviews to staff, all of which were positive. We notified over 125 residents in the area. Again, no criticisms, no negative or opposition to the project has been received to date by the project. With that, I will close, and hopefully if there are any questions, I will gladly entertain them. Thank you for allowing me some additional time.
Thank you. Council, any questions of the presenter this evening? Councilor Project.
Thank you for your presentation. Just one question. Any fossil fuel involvement at all?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council this evening? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation. And at this time, we have a recommendation that council receive the delegation from Philippe Abergel, Director, Development of Renewable Energy Systems Canada, Inc., regarding Rockery Energy Storage Project. Do I have a mover? Councilor Project, so moved, seconded by Councilor Ennis. Any comments? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. So now we'll move to, I believe it was item 15.1. 15.1. The ISO's long-term electricity procurement council support resolution. Staff have come forward. Do you have any additional information to share at this time?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple items to add. One item to clarify is that the IESO has recently requested proponents of any proposed project to clarify the definition of the final sizing for their proposed project. So in the report, just to clarify that where specific projects reference the proposed megawatts, it is supposed to indicate up to that amount of megawatts, as they may not receive that amount. The second item I just wanted to mention is that in the report, it does note that any support resolution doesn't supersede any other approvals or regulations or permits that may be required. One such regulation we want to note is complying with the township zoning bylaw. And we just wanted to highlight that our bylaw currently does not define battery storage energy facilities. And so they essentially fall into our general like public use definitions in our bylaw. So generally they'd be permitted across the township as of right. So with respect to zoning, staff do feel that battery storage facilities should be permitted only in certain zones and subject to different regulations than other public uses like Hydro One transformer stations, for example. And so just wanted to note that we are currently exploring looking at bringing forward a township initiated zoning bylaw amendment that would also be subject to a public consultation process to specifically regulate battery storage facilities in the zoning bylaw and determining where they're permitted as of right and where they would need a zoning bylaw amendment. And as well to ensure that all facilities, whether regardless of zones, are subject to the township site plan control process so that we can ensure that we're, have the ability to request studies such as noise studies and environmental impact studies, for example. Just wanted to provide that additional information. Thank you.
Thank you. That's important information. Council, any questions for clarification to staff? Councillor Willis.
Thank you, through your worship. To staff, my understanding of the process is that these proponents would get additional points on their proposal if we pass a resolution tonight. And the process requires that a municipality support a project in order for it to go forward. So essentially we have a veto. If we approve and provide a support resolution tonight, do we have the ability to rescind that later, or are we giving up any power to stop these projects moving forward?
Is through your worship to Councillor Willis. My understanding is if the support resolution is passed, then the applicants could use that to form part of their application package, which would be there. So it was made, and so they would base their decision that would help assist with the points that they're receiving in order to get a contract or not. So I think once it's passed, they could use it essentially if they've done all their other requirements of the ISO and submit that package with the resolution to the ISO at any time.
Councillor Willis.
Through your worship, thank you. So for clarity, if we do not do this tonight, these proponents would have 18 months to get support from the township. And that would be 18 months in which we would have public engagement and we would be able to learn more detail on these projects than we have tonight.
Yes, through you, my understanding is that at this point it's required at this point in the process is required and being requested for the purposes of obtaining rated criteria points. And if that's not received, they would still need a support resolution at a later date up to that 18th month mark in order to satisfy contract obligations is my understanding. And in regards to just the additional piece about being able to be involved or rescind anything, not when the support resolution is done, it's done and can be used. But I would say that there's also the additional pieces in terms of building permits required, the zoning that I required as well, which may have to go through a public consultation process, and council also involved in approving or not approving a zoning bylaw amendment. So just to highlight that as well.
Any other questions? Councillor Budrick.
Through you, sir. For staff. So if we were to put forward a blanket proposal tonight,
each individual site or project would still have to come back before council for approval for basically the project to move forward for each specific one?
Yeah, through the one item we can clarify is we understand that proponents that they would only need the resolution afterwards, if not for rated criteria points as part of their application submission, would be to satisfy a contract obligation. So they may not receive a contract from IESO and then would not need to come back to get a resolution of council at a later date to satisfy that contract. It would only be if they actually received one that they would need that that approach.
Any other questions? Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have sort of three areas of questions, but I want to just get this clarified. This whole communication process for this project was not the responsibility of the township to set up these meetings, or was it?
No, through you, that's correct. It was
Okay.
requirements from the IESO, and they're obligated to try to meet those requirements for their application.
Okay, thank you. So that leads into my next question. So what I'm hearing from residents here is it was a haphazard effort at sending out letters, notices. The fact in the township report, it says, just give me a second to find it here, that they they only had one meeting and there was a lack of staff time to review the proposals. Is that fair to say? It's right in the report.
Through you, what was referenced in the report was in regards to, we reviewed proposals, but in regards to an actual like full pre-consultation process which we typically do for all development applications, where we would have agencies involved, the county, potential ministries. Those take, several weeks to be able to set up and prepare for. So we weren't able to conduct those types of discussions prior to the ISO's deadline request.
Okay, so some residents just received written communication last week. The IESO letter sent last week. My understanding is, I stand to be corrected, that the report was posted after the deadline for delegations to appear here. One of the groups was doing their presentation Wednesday. Anyways, I guess what I'm getting at is, it appears to me that the township has done a really good job at communicating, and through the budget process, for example, it started months and months ago, and there's all kinds of opportunities. And I'm hearing from some of the residents here and through the emails I've got, there really hasn't been that much consultation or opportunity to have meetings, in a sense. Anyways, I guess that's more of a comment. I guess I have a few questions of staff in particular. In our climate resilient Loyalist Township action plan, is there anything you've seen that supports any of that? I know the answer. I'm just thought I'd ask the question.
To your worship, not specifically.
Okay.
If you're referring to our neighbors, the city of Kingston, who specifically referred to a climate emergency or crisis, is a little bit different. We're not specifically talking to not allowing the use of fossil fuel or battery storage. Our climate action plan is geared towards the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions.
So it's fair to say then an addition of any kind of fossil fuel would put that number up.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's just part of it.
Yeah, okay. So just a question to you, if I may, just clarification. So when the question is called, we have a chance to comment? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm good for now then. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, I did see the hand go up in the audience to be able to speak, but the opportunity for public speaking has passed with the delegations, the open forum. And so now it's time for council deliberation and decision making. Councillor Ennis, you have a question?
Thank you, and through the mayor. For the 3 battery storage proposals, what type of lands are they proposed for that they're currently zoned?
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Ennis, there's 2 of them have rural zoning and one of them has general industrial zoning.
And, I just, I want to be careful not to lump them all in as being the same because there are some differences between them, one of them being the current zoning of the lands. And is it correct that one of the proponents has offered a community benefit fund and the other 2 have not? Is that correct?
Yes, as far as we understand at this point.
Any other questions for clarification at this time from council? Councillor Boudreau. Did you have your hand up, Councillor Parks? Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. Through the worship to staff. Just following up on Councillor Willis's comments. I'm not sure if this is more a comment or a question. I'm just trying to clarify in my own head that what is being brought to us this evening is really more or less just to get these companies on kind of a waiting list to be approved or through the approval process. This is kind of step 1 for them in order to get onto like a list, an approved list or a possible approved list. Is that a good scenario, like a good synopsis of?
Yes, through you. Technically, it will assist if the resolution is passed. It'll allow them more points because the ISO use a rated criteria point system in order to choose projects that they're going to give a contract to. So this would allow for additional points if approved now.
You have a follow-up question?
Yeah, so really it's like a pre-qualification, but they're qualified to get onto the list if they meet the criteria. And then it still has to come back to council, depending upon zoning and all of the other public input and public consultation. Is that correct?
If they require a zoning bylaw amendment or township process afterwards, if they don't, then they wouldn't need to. So they wouldn't have to, my understanding is then the way the resolution is written and what if the ISO is allowing this to work twofold. One, that if done now, it can be used for their application to get additional points. And it can also be used to satisfy a requirement of the ISO to fulfill a contract obligation if they were to get one.
Please continue.
I just one further follow-up, and this actually speaks to Councillor Ennis's comments about, and I'm sorry if it was in the report, I may have missed it. In order for these battery storage facilities to be approved, what zoning do they have to fall under?
For you currently, right now, they don't require a zoning. So the way our zoning bylaw reads, they would be permitted as of right in any zones without a zoning bylaw amendment. So that's why I mentioned that we would be looking to initiate a township-wide zoning bylaw amendment to provide further regulations for them before any potentially came online.
Thank you. That clarified that for me.
Okay. So just going in order of who's put their hand up, I'll do Councillor Boudreau and then go to you, Councillor Willis.
Okay, through you, sir. Quick question, if you know, how many applications will the IESO be approving in Ontario? Do we know? We have an idea?
So I don't really know. There's a list, a short list. I would just be guessing. I think there's probably about 12 companies are allowed to submit a bid. The IESO is looking at approving contracts that would provide up to 2,500 megawatts across the province. And so there's a certain number. So it's across the province. So although there's 3 being proposed here in Loyalist Township, or the companies are trying to establish those in Loyalist Township, it doesn't mean that the IESO will pick 1 or all 3, but you have to consider that's 2,500 megawatts throughout the entire province.
Just to keep going on, that doesn't seem like a lot because, for example, the person speaking earlier tonight about their proposal, that was 400. So that really brings it into maybe 6 to 8 across the province. And I mean, there's 3 here, there's 3 in Napanee, there's a couple in South Frontenac. Okay, just speaking out loud. And one other thing I want to note in the report highlights, it just mentions in here a proposed blanket council support resolution is being recommended to support these projects in general and not specifically endorse any project specifically for the purposes of proponents obtaining rated criteria points for the proposal. It keeps going, but I just think that we should be objective when we're speaking about these projects.
Thank you. And Councillor Willis.
Through your worship, just following up on the question asked by Councillor Parks. So the first phase of qualifying companies by IESO has already happened. And the end result of this phase that's happening right now will be contracts issued to companies to build these projects. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Councillor Ennis.
Thank you. And through the mayor, just a question specifically on the Caton Mill battery storage plant. Some community members have raised concerns about its proximity to a residential area. And the open house has not occurred yet. It's in a couple of days. So not sure how much detail staff have, but being familiar with the area, I understand many of those properties, the owners have land on both the north and south of the hydro, because they used to be one parcel until hydro came through in I think it was the 60s. And I'm just wondering if staff have any details about why it's being proposed for north of the transmission lines and rather than south, and north being closer to residential areas.
Yes, through you, I can't speak to the applicant specific selection criteria. I generally know that criteria includes like obviously being close to the transformer lines. And I understand that the majority of them have done due diligence in terms of some initial like archaeological work, environmental screening work, and things such as that. And all of those kind of put together, I'm sure costs and everything like help assist in determining a location. But I mean, as you can see, we're looking at various locations across the township as a whole. So I can't speak individually to what the specific rationale on why that site was chosen over another one on the other side.
Any further questions at this time from council? Seeing none, I'll read out the recommendation with the report mostly for the virtual and audience and the one in chambers. The recommendation with the report is that the report from the Development Services Division, November 27th, 2023, re IESO's long-term electricity procurement be received and the council adopt the following municipal support resolution. Whereas proponents are applying to the IESO's LT1 program to construct and operate a long-term reliability project in Loyalist Township. Whereas pursuant to the LT1 RFP proposals that receive the formal support of the local jurisdictional authorities of all the project communities in which the long-term reliability project is located, in the form of a support resolution will be awarded rated criteria points for the purpose of ranking the proposal in relation to other proposals for a contract under the LT1 RFP. Therefore, be it resolved that Loyalist Township Council supports the development, construction, and operation of a long-term reliability project within Loyalist Township, that this resolution's sole purpose is to enable the proponent to receive rated criteria points under LT1 RFP or to satisfy its obligations under any awarded LT1 contract and may not be used for the purposes of any other form of approval in relation to the proposal or long-term reliability project or for any other purpose. Rated criteria points will be used to rank the proponent's proposal in relation to other proposals received by the IESO under the LT1 RFP, and that this resolution does not supersede any applicable permits or approvals under applicable laws and regulations that may be required for a particular long-term reliability project. So council, do we have a motion, either that one or one being proposed? Deputy Mayor Town.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I move to receive staff's report and take no further action at this time.
So moved. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Willis, mover, any comments?
Ultimately, I think this blanket resolution presents a number of serious challenges. For one thing, it lumps together the in-principle support for a number of very different energy projects and proposals, one of which, as we heard, is the possible expansion of an existing fossil fuel generating station. Not speaking for colleagues, I, for one, could not support any resolution which would support any further fossil fuel generated electricity, respectfully disagreeing, as I do, with IESO's perspective on the need for further methane expansion as a transition energy source. In terms of the other projects, there remains some serious concerns, some of which have been expressed this evening by various members of the public, such as, but not limited to, appropriate location and safety, all of which are in the public domain. As a consequence, and in the name of due diligence, each of these projects does need to be treated individually on their own merits with greater scrutiny and attention to detail. That process will happen organically at this council table, as we've heard, over the coming months, if the proponents indeed receive a contract from the IESO. Therefore, I see no disadvantage to council to wait until such time as these proposals return to our desk with a more substantive degree of detail and information, and giving us more control over setting our own expectations around standards of public consultation. We have a duty to inspire confidence in our residents that our decision-making capacity is sober, reflective, research intense, objective, and in the public interest. Whilst I appreciate the comments of an earlier speaker with respect to the suggestion that the as-written resolution on our agenda is a non-binding and rather benign in-principle endorsement, and notwithstanding the potential ranking/point implications for the proponent's applications, I still think on balance it is inappropriate to pass this resolution at this point in time for the above reasons.
Thank you. Seconder?
Thank you. I agree with it, as the deputy mayor has stated, and I think for me the key thing is that we get one opportunity to support or veto this project, and I think that it's too soon. We don't have enough information to lend that support, and I would not want to give up the negotiating power of having that veto.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Although not as eloquent as the deputy mayor, I'm in total agreement. When I ran for council, one of the things I put on my platform was environment, and 100% agree that we should not entertain at all any fossil fuel developments in our township. Couple of comments just that I didn't make earlier. This is what I've received from residents. Timeline has been rushed. What are the environmental costs? It's too close to population pockets. Now, this isn't everything, but in general, how will projects affect property values, taxation? the effect on air quality, water table emissions. How will the risk be addressed? Fire protection costs would go up, I would assume. You can't just add something like that without some kind of increase in service. I already answered that one. What accountability is in place to prevent a company from walking away? This has happened in the township where a company maybe disappears because there's a cleanup or something that isn't, they're not prepared to pay. Is there any kind of decommissioning plan for this down the road? I really have a problem with the concept of a blanket resolution. That just, there's too many things out there that I don't understand with that. So I am in total agreement with the deputy's motion.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Ennis.
Thank you, through the mayor. I concur with the deputy's comments and his motion. As well, I'm not prepared to submit, support a blanket resolution, at this time. The community has strongly, raised concerns, particularly with regard to the expansion of the, cogeneration plant, and concerns with, environmental impacts and impacts on human health. I share those concerns. I think this area has probably shouldered its fair share of poor air quality with the location of the Lennox generating plant, the Napanee generating plant, and this Kingston cogenerating plant over the years. So I will support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Any other comments? Councillor Budrick.
Couple things. One, if it isn't council supported by December 12th, when the applications are in, these will not go forward. So this will kill this progress. It's unfortunate. If we had the time on the battery side to see it through, we could possibly see 104 potential projects. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen. I do agree that we could use a little more information, but leave it at that.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? If Councillor Willis.
Just following up on Councillor Budrick's comment, my understanding is by December 12th, if there's not a resolution, the companies can still go forward with their proposals, but they will miss a few points on the scale, but there's still the potential that their proposals would be accepted.
That's the way I understood it as well, but thank you for that. There's no, I think everyone's spoken.
I don't know if I want to throw this one out there, but council does meet again before December 12th.
Yes. So with that, is everyone spoken that wishes to? Back to the mover for final comment. No comment? Call the question. All in favor, please raise a hand. Opposed? Abstained? Motion is passed. So that brings us to the conclusion of that item. I'm just going to mention that you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. If you prefer not, then this would be an opportune time to exit. And I would just ask, if you do leave, please go outside before you start talking, because it comes in through the doors and we have trouble carrying on with the meeting. Thank you. Do you want a 5-minute? We're just going to take a 5-minute break while the room vacates, and we'll be back about 8:20. Okay, we'll resume the meeting. And the next item is a public meeting, zoning bylaw amendment for Emma Street. We have staff here. Do you have some information to provide at this time?
Through your worship, I'll give a quick overview of the three proposed rezoning application. This rezoning applications are proposed for further residential development on 3 lots on Emma Street. This is not a recommendation report and it's just an information report to get public input. The owner's planning consultant, Mr. Jason Sands from the Boulevard Group, is also present to do a quick presentation. And meanwhile, the meeting goes on, the planning staff would be taking public notes for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff at this time from council? Councilor Willis?
Through your worship, I noticed that one of the changes to the zoning would be 1 parking space per residential unit on each lot. Is that something that we usually support in zoning applications?
Thank you.
Your mic's not on.
To Councillor Willis, at this time, because there's just the public meeting, staff are currently reviewing the application on its planning merits, and we're reviewing the planning justification that has been provided by the applicant. So at this time, we do not have any recommendations or any a stance on the request. And we are currently going to provide comments on that to the applicant following the meeting and once we've received public comments as well.
Okay, any other questions for clarification at this time? Seeing none, thank you. And Mr. Sands, you have a presentation on this item as well? Please proceed.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, staff, and all members of the public are here this evening. I have a brief presentation unrelated to battery storage, and I'll blow through this quickly and we'll be all out of here. Yeah, application before you this evening for public meeting relates to zoning bylaw amendment, player let control, as well as consent applications that I understand will necessitate some additional public meetings and public correspondence as we move forward through the process. However, I believe the focus of tonight's meeting is to really talk about the harmonization of the existing zoning that applies to the subject properties. Next slide, please. So just with respect to where we are in the community, we're just west of here, south side of County Road 2, west of Bridge Street on Potter Street, east of Potter Street, sorry. Essentially in the Mill Creek subdivision. I think all of us in the room are familiar with where that's located. Next slide, please. The aerial image on the left side of the screen provides an overview from an aerial perspective, of course, to understand where the property is located from a neighboring context perspective, but also understand, you can see the built form from an aerial point of view, what is in the neighborhood. And you can largely see some landscaped open space and parkland adjacent to the creek to the east of the site, and you can see the very what I would consider low density residential developments in the Mill Creek subdivision surrounding the land holding that's highlighted in yellow. There's potentially some semi-detached, however, it's primarily singles in the area. Next slide, please. This slide attempts to illustrate what the current parcel configuration is today. It's sort of an orphaned piece of this area, if you will, in the sense that there are original blocks that were contained on the plan of subdivision, bookend on the east end with block 31, on the west end with block 34, and the orphan center piece that's still tied to the original M plan back on 29M 57. Next slide, please. Collectively, those 3 blocks of land equate to approximately 3/4 of an acre. It's a fairly decent sized parcel for an urban setting that's serviced in your urban settlement area. It's also got approximately 86 meters of road frontage, underutilized in the sense it's undeveloped. It's central to a residential neighborhood. And I think the plan to the right illustrates fairly accurately what the intent of the proposal is to subdivide those blocks via part lot control and consent for the purposes of lot addition to establish the 8 separately conveyable parcels that would ultimately be developed with single-family dwellings. Next slide, please. I touched on most of this in my previous slide. That being said, this is the draft art plan that's been provided that would part this out and reconfigure what you see today as 3 separately conveyable blocks. Next slide, please. The boring stuff, the provincial policy statement, there's a bunch of policies to basically say that, in our opinion, this project is consistent with provincial policy statement, represents good infill development. It's an appropriate form of density in the urban setting, and it can be serviced with municipal water and sewer. Next slide, please. Of course, from the hierarchy perspective, the county's official plan is the next in order. Underneath the provincial policy statement, there are multiple policies that apply to residential intensification projects, and one of note, B6A looks to seek to provide 20% of residential intensification within Odessa moving forward for this municipality. The higher level policies as contained within the LNAOP, in our opinion, this proposal is consistent with in the sense of subdividing to create 8 separately conveyable lots. Next slide, please. The township's official plan, of course, gets into greater detail than the specifics as contained above in the county and the provincial policy documents. And it's a relatively new document that was just approved and moves through 2036. That's where your intensification targets are contained with regard to the total percentage of increased development from a residential perspective, which are really well aligned with what you see from the province as it relates to the More Homes Faster Act, the Bill 23, Bill 109, et cetera, that are being pushed from appropriate levels of intensification. There's other policies as applicable to this project, for example, urban design, housing developments, et cetera. And as a whole, the proposal, in our opinion, is consistent with the township's official plan. Next slide, please. This is where the complication begins. The zoning bylaw for the township, comprehensive zoning bylaw, has two different zones on 3 separate lots. And there's holding symbols that are applicable. So the R316 holding symbol zone and an R29 are site-specific zones that are applicable. Neither of them are essentially consistent and harmonized for what's attempted to happen with respect to the land division. And they both contain competing or differing performance standards when trying to make interpretations, for example, on what side yards appropriate or lot coverages are appropriate. So really, through this application, it's the intent of the owner to rezone the properties as a whole, that whole 0.75 acre parcel, to a single zone, which would be a site-specific R3 zone, to recognize appropriate performance standards and uses that would be consistent across all the parcels. As submitted in the original application or the planning justification report, it was our opinion that the appropriateness on alleviating some of the technical studies that might be needed, given the specifics of this, as needed upon receipt. Next slide, please. The site-specific R316H zone is what you saw as applicable to a portion of these lands. I don't say the whole because it's only a portion. And we use this to model what the new site-specific zone would be. The reason this is modeled as the base, this site-specific residential type 3 zone, is really what's applicable to the majority of that Mill Creek subdivision area. So a lot of the surrounding lands that are already developed with single detached dwellings have general standards and performance standards that are applicable to this. And the next slide will take you through what's been drafted from a site-specific perspective that would be applicable to these lands. I'll jump to the following slide and jump into the relief. I want to just touch on high level what these points are, because without going through them comparably, it might not make a whole lot of sense. So the lot area is proposed to be 330 square meters, which is consistent with what you have in the area for the R316 zone. However, the R3, the parent zone, requires 370, so we're dropping or seeking to drop that by approximately 40 square meters. The frontage as well, proposed to be reduced by a couple of meters to ensure that the 10-meter road frontage is appropriate for the singles that are proposed. And as you can see on the conceptual plans prepared by the professional engineer and the Ontario Land Surveyor, we've detailed how single-family dwellings can be accommodated on those frontages adequately. The yard setbacks, again, we've modeled them after the R316 zone to ensure that there's consistency. With respect to front yard at 4 meters, rear yard 7.5, 1.2 for interior, that kind of thing. Lot coverage, it's been proposed to increase this slightly to a 45% plus 5% for an accessory. The current zoning applicable to the area is a 43% plus 5, which to me is just confusing. 43% is a unique number. Why not make it 45 and give some flexibility for development? Building height, 10 meters is sort of a consistent across the area for single family dwellings, allows for a 3-story with a 3-meter main, upper and third story if you choose. So that's the building height provision. The number of dwelling houses provision I want to bring attention to because I know it may raise some question, and it's not one intended to raise question. It's really to bring consistency into township regulation with what the province has put forward with the new bill. So Bill 23 specifically allows for 3 dwelling units to be constructed on a lot. It doesn't tell municipalities how to regulate things like open space and parking stalls. That's left for the municipalities to do. However, to recognize what's permitted and allowed for through the province, through this application, we're proposing to allow for 3 units on site. But as Councillor had already mentioned, to allow for to 1 parking stall per residential dwelling unit. So should there ever be a desire, you'd need 3 parking stalls on one of these relatively small parcels. You could see how that wouldn't necessarily be an as of right permission. The on-site parking, there's been some tweaks proposed. Again, reducing the size 6 meters to 5.5 on length and reducing the width from 3 to 2.7. That's the 5.5 by 2.7 is a standard in, for example, your neighbor in the city of Kingston for a parking area. Next slide, please. This is the Ontario. Final slide, please. So just in summary, quick overview of this, in our opinion, is consistent with the 2020 PPS, the county's OP and the township's OP with respect to residential intensification. We've seen lots of policy changes at the provincial level and how they're coming through with municipal land use planning across the province. There's obviously a major focus on housing, affordable housing, attainable housing, and try to accommodate that in the best areas that we can. We feel that the urban serviced areas of communities such as Odessa that can support and augment our existing varied uses such as commercial, institutional, open space, that are well equipped to be serviced with the existing water and sewer facilities that you have is an excellent use of underutilized lands, for example, that you see here. The intensification that's proposed, in our opinion, is not out of scale, it's not out of character, and it's consistent with the density that you generally see in the area. It's a really well utilized concept plan for an underutilized portion of your municipality. In short, it's our opinion that the requested site-specific zoning that we're here to discuss this evening is appropriate, and it would represent good land use planning should it be adopted. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Council, could we just go back to the regular screen so I can see it? Council, any questions at this time? Councillor Willis?
Through your worship, and I believe this question is for staff, there's reference to the R16 zoning. What are the frontages on the properties that have R16 zoning?
Your worship,
Yes.
if that question could wait until you're considering the item.
Yes.
That would be appropriate.
Okay. We'll come back to that, Councillor Willis. Are there any questions for the consultant at this time? Questions for clarification? Seeing none, I just want to clarify one thing. the parking. You're looking at reducing the size of the parking spaces and reducing it to one parking space per dwelling. You were also talking about being able to do 3 dwellings per right. So that would be one parking space for 3 residents.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I apologize for any confusion through that point. The proposal is to reduce the size of the off-site parking stall, yes. The proposal is to reduce the number or the ratio so that it would be 1 parking stall per residential dwelling unit. So if an applicant in the future proposed to construct 3 dwelling units on one of those parcels, they would somehow need to accommodate 3 on-site parking stalls at 2.7 meters by 5.5 meters in size.
Off street.
That's right.
On site. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation. And we have one signed up to speak, Matt Black. You could just come forward, have a seat, turn the mic on, provide your name and address, and provide your information to us.
Good evening, Your Worship, council members, staff. Hi, I'm Matt Black. I'm a 15-year homeowner, a 40-year-old Odessa native. I grew up here. I bought my house here because of its location to schools, proximity to Kingston, 401 traveling, living in a quiet subdivision off of Highway 2. We have neighbors and we don't have fences. We respect each other's boundaries and are friendly, and we often socialize together. My back door view looks out across Emma Street onto my family's property, and currently we see the backs of these big 3-story houses on Brennan Court. My kids use the 2 properties on Emma Street that my parents own and my family owns. I used it growing up, and now my children use it. We have nice sized lots that provide us with parking for at least 2 to 4 cars, depending on the lot. We have front yards, we have backyards big enough for children to play, run around on. I'm not opposed to new development or building more houses, but my concerns are that the developer or the property owner want to make the lots half the current size to allow for 8 new homes, which means even less room for children to play in a world where we should be encouraging children to get outside and explore more. It also means vehicles to park on the street, which in the newer subdivisions mean people are parking in front lawns, in the streets, also blocking sidewalks and across the driveways. I see a lot of issues with the property amendments. More traffic down our quiet streets. Cross Street and Bridge Street are the 2 that get into the subdivision. Speeds going down Bridge Street, and there's that new park down there. There's quite often vehicles speed down there, down towards Babcock Mill, so that's a concern. More vehicles parking on the roads, which poses issues for waste in recycle trucks, snow plows in the wintertime, and emergency vehicles if there happens to be an emergency in those areas. I have a truck, and if you reduce the size of these parking spots as well as that for this, if someone has a bigger vehicle, for instance, maybe a van or something like that, then, limited parking spaces would be an issue for that too. The height of the homes, we're already on limestone. So in the new subdivision, they built these houses on 10-meter lots, and they build up because of the limestone that we're on. So they're big. They invades the privacy of people looking into the old subdivision like us. Smaller lot sizes, smaller yard sizes will force kids to play inside or on the street where where there's more cars parked. Potential for dents and dings in your vehicles and things like that. The park on Bridge Street is small and not very enticing to children over the age of 5. Odessa is a heritage village, and in the main attraction of the Babcock Mill is just around the corner. So my question is, why are we trying to cram 8 houses on narrow lots with limited parking spaces when we could build 4 to 5 homes on more modest lots and offer a front yard, a backyard that appeal to growing families that would love to move here for the same reasons I bought my house here? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll go to the virtual audience. Is there anyone in the virtual audience that wishes to speak on this item? If so, please use the raised hand feature.
Your worship, I don't see anyone.
Thank you. So that concludes the staff are coming forward again. I'll just note that that concludes the public meeting and we'll go back to the agenda. So I see staff are here. Any further comments at this time or just here to answer questions?
Through your worship, just a clarification to an earlier question. The R316 zone, the minimum frontage is 11 meters for an interior lot and then 13 meters for a corner lot.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council for clarification? Seeing none. The recommendation with the report is that the report from the Development Services Division, November 27th, 2023, public meeting, 3 zoning bylaw amendment applications, Emma Street, block 31, 29M, 57, D14014, 2023, block 29M, 57, under D14011, 2023, and lots 2015, 2016, Plan 91, under D14015, 2023, be received, and that a recommendation be brought forward to council once the comments from the township departments, agencies, and the public have been addressed. Do I have a mover? Councillor Budrick, so moved, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Mover, any comments? Seconder? Any comments from other council members? Seeing Councillor Willis.
Through your worship, I'm just thinking back to our last meeting and discussions about the potential development in Bath, and I encourage staff to push back on creating these smaller lots with inadequate parking in a village that does not have access to public transit. I think it's going to cause future problems.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Ennis.
Thank you, through the mayor. And just to concur with Councillor Willis's comments, we have heard on a number of these proposals concerns with various parking issues. So I as well will look forward to what staff brings back for our consideration.
Thank you. Any other comments at this time? Seeing none, I agree with the comments that have been made, so I won't make it again. So I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is passed. And we move forward to the public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment D14008, 2023, the Paul Payne funeral. We have staff here. Do you have information to share?
Through your worship, I'll give you a quick overview of this rezoning application. This rezoning application is a condition over a provisionally approved consent application. The intent is to change the proposed severed portion of the land from residential type 1 zone to open space exception 7 zone. Staff has reviewed the application with the planning legislation and is of the opinion to approve the proposed rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for clarification from council at this time? Seeing none. We don't have a formal presentation on this one from anyone. I'm just asking in the audience, is there anyone that wishes to speak to this item during the open public meeting? Seeing none. Go to the virtual audience. If there's anyone there that wishes to speak, please use the raised hand feature and we can bring you into the audience. None. Okay, so that concludes the public meeting portion. So the recommendation with the report is that the report from the Development Services Division, November 27th, 2023, public meeting recommendation, Payne Funeral Home, zoning bylaw amendment D14-008, 2023, be received in the bylaw 2023-078, being a bylaw to rezone the part of property found in part of lot 7576 Plan 91, as in Part 1 on Plan 29R 4449, Loyalist Township, County of Lennox and Addington, and more particularly located at 42 William Street in Odessa, from the residential type 1, R1, zone to open space exception 7, zone be enacted and passed. Do I have a mover? Councillor Broderick, so moved, seconded by Councillor Willis. Any comments from the mover, seconder? Anyone else? See none, call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Okay, now I go down to adoption of the minutes. Zooming right along now. We have the minutes of the November 9th meeting before us. Were there any errors or omissions noted by council? Seeing none, the recommendation is that the minutes of the special meeting of council, November 9th, 2023, be adopted as circulated. Moved by the deputy mayor, seconded by Councillor Ennis. Any comments? Being none, call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Confirmation of the minutes of the 20th session, November 13th. Any errors or omissions noted on that one? Seeing none, recommendation is that the minutes of the 20th session, regular council, November 13th, 2023, be adopted as circulated. Do we have a mover? Councillor Ennis, so moved, seconded by Councillor Willis. Any comments? Council? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Corporate Services Department, Tile Drainage Loan Program Borrowing Bylaw. And welcome. Or any additional information other than the report, or are you just here for questions?
Nothing to add, Your Worship, but happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions at this time for staff for clarification? Councillor Broderick.
Just being an urban type, so in effect, this borrowing, we're just raising our limit. Is that what we're doing here?
Through the mayor, yes, we're just accessing the opportunity for additional credit from the province should we require it.
Okay.
When we receive an application from a landowner.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for clarification? Seeing none, the recommendation is that the report from the Finance Division, November 27th, 2023, Tile Drainage Loan Program Borrowing Bylaw be received, and that additional borrowing under the Tile Drainage Act in the amount of $300,000 be sought from the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, and the bylaw 2023-86 being a borrowing bylaw to raise money to aid in the construction of drainage works under the Tile Drainage Act be enacted and passed. Moved by Deputy Mayor Townend. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bugrick. Any comments from the mover? Seconder? Anyone else? Call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Odessa and Wilton Flour Barrel Agreement. Welcome, Ms. Lamb. Do you have any additional information or just here to answer questions?
For questions.
Thank you. Any questions for clarification at this time from council? Seeing none, we have the report before us, and the recommendation is that the report from the Community and Customer Services Department, Recreation and Facilities Division, dated November 27th, 2023, Odessa and Wilton Flour Barrel Agreement be received, and that the council directs staff to enter into the Wilton and Odessa Flour Barrel Agreement to formalize the provision of flour barrels in select locations within Odessa and Wilton, and that bylaw 2023-87 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and chief administrative officer to execute the agreement be enacted and passed. Do we have a mover? Counselor Budrick, so moved, seconded by Counselor Wallace. Any comments from the mover? Seconder? Anyone else? I'll just comment that thank you to staff for following up. This has been a great partnership so far, and now we formalized it where now it can go forward. Appreciate that. With that, call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. And 15.1's already taken care of. So Committee of Adjustment and Appeals Committee Terms of Reference. Welcome. Do you have any more information to share beyond what's in the report?
Nothing yet. Nothing to add, your worship, is questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions for clarification at this time? Counselor Budrick.
Through you, just to, reading through this, the number of, council members, when will that be determined? Who, and when that would be done? Curious.
Yes, through your worship, Councillor Budrick, it's intended to be brought forward when we bring forward to council the recommended public member committee appointments, and then we would request that council choose at that time.
Any other questions for clarification? Counselor Willis.
Through your worship, and it may not be to these specific staff, but in the June 5th meeting where this committee was determined, there were other changes to committees. When are we going to expect to see that come back to council? Because those committees would need to be filled soon too, would they not?
We're just bringing on another staff member for that one, Counselor Willis.
All right, through the mayor, thank you, Councillor Willis, for the question. We're working on bringing that soon, hopefully very early in the new year, as we do understand the requirements with respect to the Renewable Energy Benefit Fund timelines for the next intake.
Any other questions for clarification? Being none. The recommendation with the report is that the report from the Development Services Division, November 27th, 2023, Committee of Adjustment and Appeals Committee, terms of reference be received, and that council approve the terms of reference for the Loyalist Township Committee of Adjustment and Appeals Committee, that bylaw 2023-84 being a bylaw to establish and adopt terms of reference for the Loyalist Township Committee of Adjustment be enacted and passed, and that bylaw 2023-85 being a bylaw to establish and adopt terms of reference for the Loyalist Township Appeals Committee be enacted and passed. Do we have a mover? Counselor Willis, so moved, seconded by Counselor Ennis. Any comments from the mover? Counselor Willis? No? Seconder? Anyone else? Saying none, call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Thank you. Notices of motion and direct motion. Is there any notice of motion being put forward this evening? Saying none, is there a direct motion being put forward this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. Number of items are lumped together in the consent agenda to expedite the process, and any can be extracted at the wish of a council member. So at this time, are there any items to be extracted this evening? Deputy Mayor.
20.1, your worship, if I may, and 22.3.
22.3. 20.1 and 22.3 be extracted. Any other items to be extracted this evening? Seeing none, the recommendation would be that the items 20 to 24 in the consent agenda dated November 27th, 2023 be approved as presented and that necessary action be taken with the exception of 20.1 and 22.3. Do I have a mover? Counselor Budrick. So moved, seconded by Counselor Prodrick. Any comments on any of them? Mover, seconder? Any other member? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. So we'll go to 20.1. Bylaw to appoint livestock valuators for Lilas Township.
I would move that bylaw 2023-088 be enacted and passed and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign and seal.
So moved, seconded by Counselor Prodrick. Any comments from the mover?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to single this out. I don't know if there were any plans to recognize him at a later opportunity, but Adam Miller has been a livestock valuator for the township for many, 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 many years. And I just wanted to recognize his contribution in that capacity and to thank him for his service.
Thank you. Any comments from the seconder? Any others? I just comment, there are a few names on here that have been on for quite some time. We appreciate it. And to a farmer, this is actually a very important position that the township has and very useful and greatly appreciated. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. And we'll go to 22.3. Prince Edward County Resolution dated November 14th. Deputy Mayor?
I move to receive and support.
Receive and support. Do I have a seconder? Counselor Budrick. Any comments from the mover?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Simply that I had kind of wished to have done the same as Prince Edward with respect to this as, and this is a rather political comment, I suppose, as is often the case with this provincial government, the comment period closed before a lot of municipal councils were able to support their conservation authorities in addressing some of the concerns around the expanded use of the permit by rule to waste management systems, of which there are some serious concerns. I'm sure Councillor Prodrick probably concurs in his capacity on Cataraqui conservation, and I think the resolution from Prince Edward County quite succinctly captures the problems. And I know from our board meeting at Quinte Conservation, the general feeling was as much support as could be had from member municipalities. The more the merrier.
Thank you. Seconder, any comments? That's a good one. Any other comments from other members? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Okay. Updates from members appointed to county council, committees, and local boards. Anything to bring forward? Councillor Prodrick.
Just from the Cataraqui Conservation Authority, Katrina Furtado has resigned as general manager, and we are temporarily appointing a staff member to act in that role until we have a search committee in the new year, and she's leaving to work at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in Ottawa.
Thank you, and we wish her well. Any other items to bring forward at this time? Seeing none, I'll just make a quick note that the next county council meeting will be in elections for the next new warden. And so, and deputy warden. And so you'll be seeing shortly who that will be. And the deputy and myself will be taking part in that election. Members' privilege. Does anyone have anything to bring forward under members' privilege? Councillor Prodrick.
Now, I'm going to make a mistake here, but thank the staff for last Saturday's light the night. I always get this mixed up. But anyways, my only regret is I did not see a picture of the mayor and I with Frosty the Snowman on the website or in social media. So I hope that could be corrected in the near future.
Thanks for that request. Any other items to bring forward under this? Seeing none, it was a great event, well attended, and everyone that I saw and talked to were very happy with the event and enjoyed themselves thoroughly. So it was well done. So with that, the next item is a confirmatory bylaw. Do we have a mover for the confirmatory bylaw? Deputy Mayor, so moved, seconded by Councillor Parks. All in favor? Motion is passed. We have our upcoming meeting dates there through December and into January. And at this time, we would entertain a motion to adjourn. Do we have a mover? Councillor Ennis, seconded by Councillor Willis. All in favor? Motion is passed. We are adjourned at 9:02.